going on. So welcome to the Kubernetes Book Club. We meet every week. Please follow the code of conduct, and you're being recorded, just to recap. And then we'll start with the KubeBuilder book, which I was using DevPod. This is the tool that I've been using. I really like it because I came back. It literally said, I have not opened in I opened it an hour ago, but it said here exactly 7 days ago. I didn't open it, and I click on it, and the thing came up exactly as I had it last Friday. The VS Code, all the windows open in the same place, and my terminal and my CAN cluster up and running. So I guess other environments can do that, but at least I'm using DevPod, and I really like that about DevPod. I don't have to think about like my environment, what I'm working on. So I did the open. I think if I do open, it will open the same thing. Let me see if it does that. Yep. So this is where I was working on. Make it a little bit smaller. And then we'll go where we were, which was deploying the webhooks. But I think we finished. I just want to mention one thing about the webhooks. Maybe some homework for folks, or maybe Rodolfo can answer. Well, I think Rodolfo, I'm not familiar with this exact example. But let me check in my work that was in Flux, so I can do it live, and then we'll troubleshoot together in the main branch. So this is the working one, and why it didn't work. Come on. I think it expired. Okay, never mind. We'll switch to main. Git checkout main. And then that's where we were last time. We had a cluster. Everything was running 6 days ago, so you can see we met 6 days ago in 23 hours exactly at this time. So our controller is running. We were doing we did the webhooks, deploy it. I put the hack folder, the hack file, the instructions last time. If you look at the repo, they're in the notes. So I have a hack folder. So I have the notes here. So if you want to deploy to kind, these are the command: make docker build, kind load, and make deploy. I also added a folder, which I added a folder called book source, because the instructions usually don't give you like the source code. It gives you like snippets. So it's difficult to get that code into as you do the tutorial. So I did a copy here so we can have it like a working copy. If we get into trouble, we can use that in here. So we build the thing. We keep kind load Docker and deploy the webhooks. This was the error that we found. Like Prometheus is Prometheus. We didn't deploy Prometheus for metrics. Please comment this out. And then we follow the instructions to for cert manager to be configured, and then deploy it. And then let me show something about the webhook. So this is homework. If you want some homework. So if we deploy the our cron job CR, I don't think I have one. Get cron jobs. I have one. So let me delete it. Is that font okay, or make it a little bit bigger? I'll make it bigger. Does it look okay, my terminal?
Yeah, it's okay.
So I'll delete it, and then we'll deploy it again. And what I'm deploying is this sample that we have here. Put it here. We're implementing our own cron job that takes the schedule syntax, and every 60 seconds, it will create a job. And then that job will create the pod that has the spec and basically prints this. So if we do kget, it's 28 seconds ago, and there's no jobs, I believe. Let me see. Oh, there's one job, get pods. So it got run. So in 60 seconds, which I think is I put 1 minute, it would deploy another one. So let me see if I do pods. I think it would do another job. I was looking for job, but it says 23 seconds. So what we did before was webhooks. We did a validation webhooks to make sure that the syntax that is passed is a valid cron job syntax, and also mutation webhooks to inject certain. If you don't provide certain parameters, it will like fill in those defaults. So it shows how to do defaults. If it cannot be handled by the CRD a specification, right? So if it's a custom logic, you would do it there. So I'll wait for the thing to run. So here's the second one. So it ran. I think that's it. It just ran and then printed the thing. But what will happen? So my jobs are running, right? The control is running on the webhook. So I have kget validation webhooks, and I should have the cert manager one that we discussed last time a lot, and then hours. So it means that if I put something in here, or let me delete it like I did before, and I put something invalid in there, our controller should be able to detect it with the code that we put for validate, and then say that that's not a valid syntax. So if we put foobar in here, I don't have it, right? I don't have kget cron a batch. But I deleted it. Oh, I didn't put the thing, right? I don't have it. So now if I want to deploy it, so this is like kind of like your bets, like Vegas. Who thinks it will fail? Who thinks it's going to work? Who thinks it's going to just go through, or who thinks it's going to fail? Any bets? This is betting. Like you don't have to be right or not. Anyone? You can unmute yourself and talk.
Nobody wants to. Somebody said no. We got one for no.
Why say that it will work or it will not work?
I think it will work.
You think it will work? Okay. So we have 1-on-1. So let's try it. No error. So we do guy dash o YAML. We can see it there that where's the schedule? Schedule is foobar. So there's a bug in the book that it gave us the code to do the validation. I think it was this guy. The validation is this guy. And it's not validated. And this is the type. I think maybe it's here. Where is the validation? Validation, right? We went over and it's not validating, or maybe we did something wrong. So that's the homework. If somebody can figure out why it's not stopping there and can provide the patch or the fixing in Slack in the next days, we'll appreciate it. So I just wanted to show that. Or if somebody knows the answer, what's the fix and why is this not working? Because that was the whole purpose of having the validation. If you want to review that section, you can go back to this thing doesn't show the browser thing. Oh, here it is. I'm stupid. The defaulting a validation, right? And it went through the code, and it uses a library, a cron library, to make sure that it's correct. Validate cron job name, spec schedule. Here it is, right? Validate schedule format of the schedule. So, and then it parses the thing, and if we need to validate the cron job is well formatted, and it should failed, so it should return this. I think the code is in there, or we did or we didn't copy the code correctly. And this code it should go into, what is the file name? Cron job webhook. So it might be that we didn't do it correctly, but or maybe we didn't do this part. But if it's that simple, then give it a try. If you have not read this part of the book, then you can do it. And if it works for you, please let us know that we're missing the code that is in the book. But I'll leave it there because I think we talked about webhooks a lot last time. So we'll go and move into testing. And the reason I show this is why is it good to have testing? Is to capture these type of things, right? If you don't have testing, then you cannot catch this type of error. Like you think you put the code or the right code, but it's not working, and that's a test escape because you didn't put test to do that. So let's talk about test. I was going to skip it, but after reading it, I thought it was interesting, and I learned a few things of the tools that they use. So let's start with that. I'll jump to that section. Sorry that I'm going like this, is because I'm using VS Code to do the browsing. So writing controller tests. So controller tests, if you read this chapter, it uses a framework called Go. I think this is also, I saw that this is a library that it's maybe it's only to Go. Maybe it was only to Go. I was going to say, I heard there's another library like this. So the environment, the test environment, the way it works is has a sweet test.go file. When we did KubeBuilder, it generated that file. Let's look at that file for a second. We can close this. We don't need this, and we need sweet, this one. So this one came when we did the scaffolding with KubeBuilder. It came and it created a scaffold. So it created this section with the imports. It uses BDD also. Let me see, BDD, where it mentions BDD, style testing. I think it mentioned it somewhere, or maybe it's mentioned it. But it's a type of describe your tests. I think that's the next section. Maybe it's the next section. But here's the bootstrap. So this is the part that I found interesting. So it has something called, so this is setting up the log. So before suite is a function that runs every time you run a test suite. So you're familiar doing unit testing in all the languages. This translates very well. Of like before is where you set up your test features or environment, or set up the using test containers, for example. It's a very good project where you set up the test containers, and then after you run the test, unit test, you tear it down with there's an after suite at the bottom. But in here, what they do is they use some utility from a package called controller runtime pkg env test. And what this does, it says that it creates a cluster, but basically, yeah, it's you're creating a cluster on demand. These are the CRD directory path that says, like, when you boot up the cluster, these are the CRDs that you want to install. This section in here says where to find the binaries. So the thing that is very interesting here is when you run unit tests, you don't need a actual cluster. You don't need it. We're not going to be using the kind cluster. No code is deployed there. You don't need a Kubernetes cluster. But the unit test framework, this framework, what it does is, if you look at in your VS Code, in the bin folder, there's a KX folder. And then in here, there's a version of Kubernetes, and it has binaries. So it has a binary for your host. So in this case, it's Linux AMD 64. So it has a Kube API server. So it would start a Kube API server, and a Kube API server needs a database. So it will start an etcd. So it will use these two binary files to run kind of a cluster, Kube API server with a with a database. So you can deploy your environment, do your testing, and then at the end just shut it down because it's a binary. I think it was this is something new that I learned, like reading this today. Very fascinating. I thought people use like real servers when they were doing unit testing, but actually this runs faster. And but the mechanism that they use is just have a kube API server binary, and it's like the same Go binary that goes into a real Kubernetes cluster. And etcd, I guess, is a copy. It's etcd and runs one copy. And then if you don't specify this and you do run go test, it will try to look in here in this path, but it's not there. So any questions on that? Did somebody, I guess Rodolfo knew that. Did somebody knew this already? I didn't know this, so I thought it was missing.
I've never done testing around this kind of stuff, so this is pretty cool.
So yeah, I think me and Eric, we are in the infrastructure layer, right? That we always like, if we need a cluster, we do kind or Minikube or just a real cluster. But this is like these two binaries, like we can have like test something quick, right? If you're writing some code, that's a fast way to get an API, like your cluster or multiple clusters.
Yeah. It's like a mini integration test.
Yeah. And then what about if you have your, I don't know, if this is real or not, if you're writing a single controller that needs to support Kubernetes 122, 124, 125, 126, 120. How did you test all these versions, right? You just use this methodology to find that one bug that happens in, I don't know, 124, but it doesn't happen in the new versions. So this is how you can do the test matrix. So I'm guessing this is like, Rodolfo, do you know if upstream, this is like when they do the test metrics and they do integration tests, I guess this is what they run. They just run go test against.
Yeah, actually, in my current job, we are working with M-test, but we are not using this specific test. I think I should implement that.
You're using EMV test?
Yeah.
Tool? Okay, that's the next thing I was going to show. That's what configures this. So I'll show that in a minute. Cool. And so yeah, this is how it gets set up. In this case, this unit test, this is very simple, right? This is kind of a hello world. So this unit test is just creating one test environment with a specific version of Kubernetes. But as you can see, you can have like running this test from the outside, passing environment variables, and that's what the make test does, passing different versions of Kubernetes. So this is how you test different versions of Kubernetes. So we'll do that, and then the next one is then after you define your cluster, let's keep calling a cluster, or your test environment, you start it, and then you add your schemes that is for the cron job API kind. So this is something that gets generated in here. It gets inserted of like, so your Kubernetes cluster knows that those schemes exist. And if you add more kinds into your API, then this KubeBuilder generator tag or annotation will keep adding them here. And then this is how you create a client, because you'll be creating like a job and then testing if the job, like this test that we did that with the invalid schedule format. This is something that you can add here, like deploy a cron job with the wrong syntax. So you will use the client, this client to deploy and then assert. And it uses a different one than the one from your manager. It explains here why, because of the cache. So if you read this, it explains why is it doing a second one and not leveraging the Kubernetes client, your manager client. Then it creates the manager. So I think this is maybe the new code. Let me see if it's correct. Yeah. So I already put the code. So if you see this code and you don't see it in yours, it's because I added the section that it says here to add. This is why it was a little bit difficult to go, like, you need to add this section. So you can add your controller, right, to get it started. And I think that's it. And then start it, like here, this section, you have to add it. So this section was not there. I added that there. And then you start your controller. And then, yeah, cron job reconciler with setup manager. So this is look very similar to the one that is in your main.go, how you bootstrap your manager to get started, and then you do a start. And then when you finish, you call cancel. So the original code didn't have context and cancel, so this line got added here. So that's basically what it explains in this section here. Testing your controller behavior. So I'll stop here, and then I'll test what I have before changing anything. So one thing that you can do to test it is you can run make test, and then make test. I'll show the make file. So this will actually, I already did the testing. So if you run it, you will get this information. So if you want to run with a different version in your make file, what test is running, if you look for the test, it's generating the manifest files, it's running generate, formatting Go, and then vet is a Go utility or Go component that checks for, it's an analyzer of your source code. So I did, yeah, if you do a Google search for Go vet, this will be running Go vet. That is down here. What is Go vet? Or up here? Where is vet? I'm an idiot. So format Go, and then Go vet against your code, and then that would analyze like atomic operations or like some type of it's like an analyzer. So it's good that they show it there. And then env test is this section here, this acting where Rodolfo mentioned. So env test is down here, and then it basically checks if env test is available, and if this binary, so the binary is here. So this binary call setup env test is checking that if it's there, and if it's not there, then it would install it. And then when it's running the test, the make test, actually what it does is, where is it? It's running this command. It's setting up the path, like where is the Kube API server and the etcd that I need to use. So this will run env test setup with use, and if you don't have it, this version of Kubernetes, it will download it. So I'll show it. So right now I'm specifying 128. I think I had 127. So if I change, I have here 128.0, 127.1, but I can check what are the versions available. And 128.1, I think is released. I saw it in the change log, or it's about to be cut. But if you run it in the terminal, so let me run it in the terminal. If you do bin, what is it? Setup. You can do -h to see what is available. So you can run it with list, cleanup, sideload, means that you already have the files. So if you're running this in an environment that is air gap, right, and you're not allowing it to go to the internet and grab these files from upstream, then you use a sideload. But if you run it with list, it would tell you what are all the versions that you can have env test use, and then it will download the binaries, and then you set up the environment variable. So when you run your unit test, you're testing against a controller with 128, 127, 126. So it looks like it doesn't have all the versions. Let me double check. Yeah, I think it has. Like in 123, it has like 1, 3, and 5, 3 patch versions. So I don't know the background on this, but these are the ones that are available that you can use. So if you run use and we need to test, we're going to support this controller with, I don't know, 122. I can pass 1.22.0 and it should download the folder. So it got downloaded. Oh, it got downloaded here. So it looks like when it uses the use is passing where to download it. Where is it? Shell env. Oh, bin directory. So my bad. Bin dash there. I think might be just bin. See if that works. There you go. So now we can test with 122.0 if we want to test our controller. And then you can just switch here. You can do 127 and then do make test. And then our test should run with 127. And then this part, so as you can see, you can run, it's running with a code coverage. I think this is cover profile. And then you can run just go test if you have, that's what I explained earlier in the book. If you put this section here in the code, where is it? In your code, this binary, what was the section? The test, suite test, the binary directory assets, where is it? This is, I'm confused. Let me see where I am. So, oh, here it is. I'm setting up my environment. Oh, okay. So I was looking at the wrong file. So we haven't done the changes. I think I was showing an old file from the hack. So we'll copy the files. So if I compare this guy with the one that we have, and we do a compare selected, you will see that is adding the cancel is adding the binary assets. So this is the section that I mentioned. Like if you run go test, it will find where the location is. It will add the KS manager to start your controller, and then it will have the cancel. So I think that's it. So let me copy that. So I need to copy this into my code. So that's why I was a bit lost. I can select all this and just replace it. It's the same thing. I can run make test. So see, there it's not running any tests. Has this CRDs that gets installed called project, which I'm not familiar what it does because it created something called a CRD called project config. I think that's a KubeBuilder thing to be deployed into the kube API server, not ours. So when you see this is happening against not the kind cluster that we have, but the other one. So now we can even run. So if we run go test dot slash dot. Let me see if it fails. It will work because it will find what we put in there, but then it will be hard coded. It is hard coded to whatever I put in my source code. So it's much better to just make tests. Since make tests, you can change the version. So if I do go test, it will always going to run with this version. But of course, you can set up this with like an environment variable and then pass it in I think they should have done that. But that then assume that in your terminal, you have to set this environment variable and pass it. So if I want to test with a different version, I can do it, download it, and test it. So if I want to test with 128 with make, I can do make test, and I'm testing with 128. Now I'm testing 128. It'll be good to print the version that you're testing. Or I guess it's doing, actually in this case, it's doing 127. I wonder why. Or I'm changing again the wrong file. I think I'm changing the wrong file. I think I'll remove that book thing. I'll put 128.0 here and then run make test. Keep changing the wrong file. So now I should say 128. 128. So now we're testing against the latest version of Kubernetes. Okay, so the next thing is the behavior of the controller itself. So in this case, it's recommending that for every kind that you have, you create a kind _ controller _ test.go file. And then in there, add your tests, where you're going to do something like describe the test. And in this case, let me copy the file, and then we'll look into the file on what it does. So let me close this one and then look into the hack, and trying to remember to close it. So if you look into the hack, it's already here, the file. So I can just copy the file from here, close it, close this one, and then paste it in here, paste. So now this is the actual testing. The other one is just setting up the testing with the cluster version that we want. And we saw env test. So in this case, this is a, I think it does a simple test. It's going to create a cron job with this name in the cron job namespace called default. The job name is test job. And default, that's why you always assume that the default namespace is always present. So when we run the binary of Kube API server, should have a namespace called default. But again, you can create namespaces inside your job, or when you set up the job, your testing. So it's saying like when I updating cron job status, should increase the cron job status to active when new jobs are created. So when the new job is created and the owner is this cron job, then the status, our controller, what it does, it updates the status with like the number of active, for example, if they're running, or a number of completed. So this is using Go to define the cron job, and use the Go client to deploy or create a cron job with the specifications that we need. So this is kind of like creating the same YAML that we had before, just creating with Go. So you will have your metadata for your kind, your metadata with your name and namespace, and then your spec. So this is what we needed, our scheme. And then our schedule is the same one every 60 seconds. And then the container that is going to be running. We don't need I don't think we need a real container, because we're going to create the job ourselves. Then creates the cron job. I should make sure that it exceeded the curation. So this is where we can test. Like I said before, we can put foo bar in here and have it one of these unit tests to make sure that if we put a foo bar in schedule, it should not succeed, right? It should fail that test. So that was just an example. That's why I wanted to show a real failure on our controller, so you can write unit tests to see if you can add a unit test to capture, like when we put the wrong syntax, and the validation webhook will catch that. So in this case, I don't know if it's checking the validation webhooks. I'm guessing, I'm not sure. So the next thing is, this is basically this is a way you can learn how to use the Go client. It's using eventually. So this is the stuff that is in the book. If you read through it, explains what eventually is. So when you deploy something to Kubernetes, it's eventual consistency. So not you cannot assume that the status is right away available there. So it may take 1 second or 2 seconds to actually create the job, and then you can find it in and get it out from etcd. So eventually it's something that it would try. I think I read somewhere it will retry, and then with the case it will retry this function x number of times with this interval and then timeout, and then we just check that this should be true before we continue. We check that the expected schedule that we put in is the expected schedule that we got back or we read back out. So that's a normal test. And then we create, so we check that there's 0 active jobs. So in this case, we get the status and active, and it says 0. And then in here, we're creating a new job with job status 2, like simulating that the job has 2 pods that are running in parallel. And then we want to make sure that our reconciler can propagate that status into the conditions on the status of the actual CR. So basically what you do, the way you do this is, since all these objects work with Kubernetes owner reference, you need to add the owner reference on the job, that the owner of this job is the cron job that we created at the top. So this is the section that does this. It gets a reference to the controller and then sets the owner reference on our job in here, and we should succeed, right? It should create a test job with that owner reference and it should work. So this is just checking that the Kubernetes create CRUD operation worked. And then we have to check, get back that cron job with eventual time. Like it may not have it right away. So that's why eventually it's a good function when you do this type of unit test, and then retry until you get the information that you want. And then it's just checking that the job name matches on the status. And it's listing the number of jobs that are active. I think that's it. That's how you write the unit tests. We describe basically a function starts with describe and then using the framework. So if we run make test, we should see it there. So let me save it, then run make test. And it should work. There you go. So it's testing 1128. It's doing the code coverage, so it's printing that information. Oh, this is the KubeBuilder project thing, but now it's taking a little bit of time because actually it's running our test, creating a job, creating a cron job, creating the job, and basically this is our test. This is the one test for our controller, and as you can see, we have 39% of the statements are covered, and the thing finished in 60 seconds. So we tested with 128. If we want to test with a different version of Kubernetes that we have here, 127.1, we can change the make file with 127.1 from make test, run it again, and we should see 127. So running it through from the outside, it's faster, but also if you want to run it from the inside, then it's okay if you put 128 in your suite, or just drive it through an environment variable, or if the environment variable is not set, you can default to 128. So this is code that you can adjust how it behaves. And then 127 passed. So now you know your controller works in 128 and 127. And now I'm curious to know if VS Code like has these things for other languages that you can like hover and do test. I don't think this thing has that. Or let me see here. Let me see if I do. I don't think this would run. Do you think this will run if I do run test? Anyone knows?
Try it.
That's the only way we can find out stuff, right?
If it's a standard Go test, I would hope that if
Let's
it doesn't
see.
work, there'd be a way to set it up to work.
Yeah, okay. So it's running Go test should work, because I was testing like Go test like alone, and it wasn't working. It was because I didn't have this function in there, so it couldn't find the Kube API server. So at least it's doing the KubeBuilder internal project thing. That's not our test. I was getting confused. It's
But
the
okay. Break it and see if it fails it.
sorry?
It says okay.
Yeah, I think it's still running. Just
Is it?
taking a while. Let me see.
Got a time at the end.
Oh, you think it's done?
Maybe. I would say try putting a breaking case in there and see if it comes back with a fail.
Okay. Well, I think this thing doesn't run our test. You think? I'm
I
confused.
don't do Go programming much, so I'm not sure.
So, oh, you're saying like let's break the test?
Yeah, make the case break and see if
Okay.
actually that's a better.
Or like put something here, like this thing should be not expected, and I can run it again, see what happens. Let's see if it runs. Because I'll run in a second. Go test. Oh, it's running this function. Oh, it failed.
That's a good
Expected.
sign.
That's a good sign. Yay. So I can debug my tests, like when I can put a breakpoint here, then go here and then do debug. I don't know if this is interesting, but this is how I actually learn breaking stuff. Do any of you learn by breaking stuff?
Don't test a test until it breaks. You're supposed to write the failing test and then write the code to fix it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You need to see it fail first. So it says like it's listening, but I don't think it did what we thought. Oh, I click here and then it opened this. So run and debug. Maybe this is homework to figure out. Launch is already running. Now we have to figure out a way to debug this thing, but yeah, it's not running. But at least we can run the test from here.
I think you should point the breakpoint on the code.
I did. I put it here in the test.
on the comment code. Comment line.
Let me see. Good catch. Good catch. Let's try again. Well, this thing is running. It should fail. Let's try again. No, I don't think it's going to do it. I think this is oh, it did. Who's the genius? Okay. If it broke, it didn't break where I wanted, but it broke something. So okay, good. Thank you. Who was that? Thank you so much.
Mohammed.
Oh, here it is. So it stopped at the bottom, but then eventually it came here, and then we can see what is the value that we have and the expected one. So we can look at cron job, create a cron job. What is the spec, schedule, and that doesn't match what we put here. And then now we can debug our tests. So thank you so much. So I think 2 sessions ago, we learned how to debug actually the code, and it was super simple creating that, but it looks like now we can do it for our testing. So I think it was useful to get testing working. And then I think that's it. That's it points out more advanced testing, but that's what the book covers. So I think that's it for today. Appreciate for folks that stay along and listen and watch. Hope that this was useful for you. Any feedback before we shut down? I'll stop the recording. See you, folks.